So what I'd like to do is just to offer up to you very briefly a case study of how we dealt with that with the technology available to us now in 2010, and for you all to think, well, perhaps how will this be dealt with in 2030? The reason that we did this, and I'll just explain before I show you the film. The reason we did this is that there was a shocking survey done of interviews with young Muslim men in both Europe and in the Middle East. And one of the key factors that was discovered that has created such antagonism was ignorance, both on the part of Muslims and non-Muslims. In the West, there is a terrible ignorance of the role that the Islamic world played in the development of learning and of so-called, in inverted commas, Western civilization. And in the East, there's ignorance amongst Muslims of their own history. Often young Muslim men describe themselves as victims. And yet, if you look at their cultural history, Islamic history has an extraordinary record of huge success. The Caliphate was in charge of a quarter of the world for close on 700 years. And this was a time of great moderation, not of religious fundamentalism, but of collaboration. And so these are the stories that need to be told again, both to the West and to the East, so that we can understand one another and work together better. So this is what we did in order to try to deal with this. We created a film. If you go on muslimheritage.com, you'll find the very little cheap films that we made that cost about €4,000 to make, which had huge impact. We had a lot of anti-terrorist organisations coming to us and saying that men had gone and given themselves up in police cells because they'd watched these films and said that they'd inspired them not to burn bridges, but to make them. And they meant, that wasn't metaphorical, they meant they were actually going to burn bridges and to bomb bridges. But we realised that what we needed to do, as well as these little films that went on the internet, which any university like Maastricht could easily do because they're not expensive, we also need to try to engage with the younger generation who will themselves be the students of 2030. And so we thought, well, how do we do this? How do we tell this story in a way that a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old can understand it? And we thought, well, the big entertainment phenomenon of recent years has been the Harry Potter films. I'm sure who will admit to seeing, watched the Harry Potter films? Students, I bet you have. Yes, everybody always admits eventually. So, as you know, huge worldwide phenomenon. So we tried to make something which talked about Islamic history, but used, if you like, the metric of the Harry Potter film. I'm not going to show you that whole film because it's 12 minutes long, but what I am now just going to show you is how we released this film. We created a travelling exhibition to go with it and a series also of websites so that young people could engage. So you don't have to listen to me for 5 minutes. You can now watch this film. So if we can play the film, please.
London, January the 21st, 2010. Something happened that could change our perception of the modern world.
It's got a huge water-powered clock, instruments for measuring the stars, and a darkroom from the 9th century. On top of all that, it can explain why numbers are written the way they are. A new exhibition traces how the Muslim civilization has influenced science for the last 1,000 years.
An idea, an exhibition, a film, a book. Imagine a world of science 1,000 years ago that shaped the world today.
We have about 1,000 years of amnesia, which is called the Dark Ages.
In the West, we went through the Dark Ages, and if you like, the candle of human knowledge and understanding was carried by the Islamic world.
That's the story we want to give. It's like a shock. Ah, inventions? Do these people have inventions, they say? And of course they do.
1001 Inventions is a global educational initiative.
The Abdul Latif Jamil Foundation is very focused on bringing about social awareness around the world. And this exhibition here is displaying a period of time that no one really knows about. And yet this period of time brought about a fantastic development of technology which has continued through to modern time and can be seen now.
I think this is quite crucial because what it does illustrate is the shared heritage that we all have. We talk about a global society today, but equally in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th centuries, the society was global then as well.
This is a world that was lost to so many people, and an exhibition like this brings it back to life and shares all those extraordinary achievements.
It's a wonderful teaching resource we've now got here.
We've learned how to translate words from English to Arabic in a matter of seconds.
If they never thought of any of this back then, we wouldn't have been having like cameras and cinemas nowadays.
See how ancient discoveries connect with our modern world. Ben Kingsley will take you on an enlightening journey.
Excuse me, where are we going?
From darkness into light, my young friend. From ocean onto land, there are things you should know. Oh, yes, indeed. Take a look. If you dare.
What's going on?
Welcome to the Dark Ages, or as it should be known, the Golden Ages.
This new space is using the historical roots of science as a means and as a tool for social cohesion and cultural convergence, where people respect and harmonize with each other.
What we can show in here in a very beautiful way is the multi-faith, the people who have all worked together.
During this period, it may have been part of the Islamic Empire, but there were great Jewish, Christian scholars working here.
Sabian, Hindus, Buddhists.
There were Persians, there were Arabs, there were Turks, there were Chinese, there were Indian. It's just a period in history that people in the West don't seem to know about.
There are women who did things like set up universities, who invented scientific experiments, and they're really celebrated in this exhibition.
It's beautiful, it's engaging, it's fun, and it's fascinating.
It's done with wonderful imagination and flair, as well as good scholarship.
You will learn, but you will be excited.
It's completely magical.
Really informative.
I'm just completely enchanted by it.
I can see how careful they've been, not to exaggerate, not to claim credit where they can't be sure.
It's not just nice pictures and electronics. Every word and letter has been thoroughly vetted by academic peers. We have a galaxy of historians of science from around the world. They have to vet all this.
This is historical fact, guys. You know, it's, the world may not know about it, but they should do.
What we're doing here today is to focus on London and then to take the exhibition around the world, in the United States and also in the Middle East.
Into Europe, into the Far East as well. And of course, we want to have it in different languages. It's a new space. It's a breath of fresh air. We are having a journey to the past, but it's for building and designing a better future.
So what I should explain about that is that initiative is non-political, non-religious, non-sectarian, non-partisan. The point of it is to celebrate this shared cultural heritage of the so-called Dark Ages, which, as we all know, was an extraordinarily bright time. It was put together entirely by an academic body, that film. And academics in the room, I'm sure that you can share with me my horror when I heard the voiceover that they put on it, which is that deep booming Hollywood American, you know, kind of drawl. And I thought, just this is terrible. This is so, I mean, this is just so naff, to be honest. We can't have it, we can't have it, we can't have it. But actually, the filmmakers who edited the program were very clever because they said, this is what kids are used to listening to. This is how all their adventure stories start in Hollywood. So this means we will draw them in, and then you've almost got them by stealth. You're teaching them something else. And he was absolutely right, because that film, as I said, has now gone onto the web. And so far, we've had close on 2 million requests, particularly from young children in India, the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, North Africa, Egypt, saying, please can we come to learn about our history in Europe? And that is an extraordinary number. So if Maastricht University, if you're thinking that you might possibly be able to host some of these enlightened, broad minds who want to learn more about their own culture, then you should set yourself ready for a lot of applications, because there are keen minds out there who want to learn. If you look at those regions which were once themselves hotbeds of learning, Baghdad, of course, with the House of Wisdom, the Russian steppes, which are now absolutely abandoned, Anatolia, where civilization itself started, then you realize that these are now denuded, but you, who are so centrally placed, I mean, I love the graphic at the beginning of this session where it shows how central Maastricht is really to everything. You can be like a kind of a modern-day Omphalos, like the Delphic navel of the world, that wise people will come to so that they can attain greater wisdom. I think that it's very important for us as academics always to remember that when we create our own academic research, we shouldn't just hone this perfectly shaped object and work out how high and how far we can throw it. We should always imagine the ripples that it creates when that research hits the waters of the world, because I think the waters of the world are ready to learn. And I'm just going to finish, because of our theme of internationalism and things of love this afternoon, with a quote, believe it or not, from ancient Babylon. Ancient Babylon, modern-day Iraq, was an immensely forward-looking place. And we're talking about 5,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago. And there's a very beautiful inscription from ancient Babylon which shows what men and women would say to one another when they joined in together in a room exactly like this, of about the same number of people. I'd guess there are probably about 300 people here. It was usually a room of about 300 people. And what they would say to one another to prove that they stood on common ground, that they wanted to love what one another did, the tar erotica that would come centuries later with Socrates, and that they looked together to a brighter and a better future. They would say this, Anashulmi u Balatu, which means to peace, to life, and to the wisdom of the future. So I would like to propose a pledge tonight, not a toast, because I haven't got a glass in my hand, but a pledge. Anashulmi u Balatu, to peace, to life, and to the glittering future of Maastricht University. Thank you very much.
Thank you.